Yeah, thanks a lot for that. And that was a great presentation from Edna, who actually, I thought it was a counsel of hope, really, whereas probably my presentation is going to be a bit more of a counsel of despair, really. I suppose I'm not an educational professional, so coming at this as a citizen, but I've always regarded myself as an active citizen. You know, I've been a worker, I've been a shop steward, I've been a Labour councillor, and always felt that I've had one foot in the camp of the establishment, one outside it. But more and more I feel that I don't have that benefit of stepping inside our democracy anymore. And I feel that more and more people in the networks I share, whether it's my community, my union, my family, all feel that they are economic tools rather than active citizens. So I suppose I've attended the last two thinking that a centenary commission is really an opportunity to ask big questions. So I'm very keen that, you know, at the end of this process, we do ask those big questions. And I think Edna highlighted some of them. But I suppose for me, as someone who's tried to remain an active citizen, we also need to sort of critique where we come from. And a little while ago, I read this book by Diane Ray called Miseducation, and she came and spoke at a Labour Party meeting that we had, and it really set me thinking about all the involvements I have in the state, whether as a citizen, whether as a trades unionist. I have family who are teachers, I have family who are workers, who are binmen. And I suppose I've been involved in trade union education, and I now work with the Independent Working Class Education Network. And it's made me begin to think about that big tent of where we are and what are the big questions we should be asking at the end of this centenary. And I've become seeing that the neoliberal marketplace has come to dominate our communities. And it is, whether we like it or not, it's a deliberate ideology. And these are some quotes I picked out. As I've seen elements of our society change over my lifetime to liberal tactics. The first quote is Marx, the second one is by the Jesuits, and the third one is by me. I suppose I've been a school governor since the late 1980s, in fact, the middle 1980s, and I've seen, you know, what was schools very much belonging to their communities. In fact, it's safe to say now that the whole of our education system is a marketplace. It's moved from being part of our active democracy. Many are remote from communities. Whether we like it or not, we have a selective education system, mainly by market house prices and by the structures. Staff are very much managed under a neoliberal basis of appraisals, performance by results. And for the children themselves and for students, it's very much a philosophy of this is your one chance in life. This is the chance, you have your golden ticket or the American dream. And if you fail at this, then you fail at life. And I've despaired when I've heard teachers talking to 10-year-olds about to sit their SATs results, that saying this exam will affect the rest of your life. And I think this is the beginning of where they start. And again, this is another book that I've recently read, which again begins to flesh out not only what's happened in the UK system, but all around the world. Again, further education, as someone who repaired their lack of schooling through further education and through adult education, there must be recognition that it is on the edge. We will begin to see a consolidation around the further education sectors. They more and more become dominated by service to employers. There's pressure for results. And again, the staff are into the same neoliberal management structure. I suppose higher education is, and I don't want to offend anybody here, there's lots of people from higher education, but you'll probably recognise some of the things here. I come from a Sheffield, a city of 2 universities, and it is very much more now becoming about the universities almost seem a separate entity to the city. Very little engagement with normal citizens within the city. It's very much seen as an industry more than education establishments. There's a growing divide almost between the red brick universities and the so-called new universities or ex-polys. But there's also been a change. The debt system has also changed the nature of the students at those colleges and universities. I engage with them, and very much it is a market relationship. I talk to staff in the universities where the students themselves see themselves as customers rather than students. And it's a big challenge for that sector. I suppose part of my life has been in the workplace as a trade unionist, and I think it was great to see at one point where we were bringing union learning into the workplace, where we were trying to persuade employers to take on more training. But that too has gone into reverse. There's very much a divide between industries that have so-called continuing professional development, whereas most workers actually will receive probably less than 1 or 2 days a year training, and most of that will be statutory training. The management techniques of things like teams, briefings, quality circles individualise the worker, disabling them and taking them away from a collective nature. And the gig economy and self-employment has put an even bigger gap between any sort of collective engagement. I suppose part of our reviewing of where adult education is, as I say, is critiquing the education system, but also the work system, also the lies that or the mirages that are created, the idea of good jobs, and you either get a good job or you get a bad job. We're actually seeing at the moment premiums arriving for so-called dirty jobs and truck drivers and factory workers, agricultural workers, because of a shortage of labour. But even in good jobs, we know that most employers are actually looking to de-skill or export jobs rather than promote them. And, it really gives a lie to the focus that education is merely for economic purposes, as that economic platform becomes narrower and narrower. And a couple of good jobs about, I mean, lots of young people who work in call centres in Sheffield. Call centres are a rite of passage, really. And the book Working the Phones is really about the culture that's grown up about students or young people moving from job to job among call centres. And again, a very transitory life with very little collective organisation. I suppose from my own trade union education, it's trade union education, like adult education, is under pressure. When I became a shop steward in the 1970s, you were given 3 books. One was My Life's Battles by Will Thorne, about the beginning of the gas workers industry. The second was The Ragged Trails of Philanthropists. And the third one was Citrine's Rules of Chairmanship. And it was great to see. I started work as a railman, and my local councillor was the station supervisor, and another councillor was a driver and a porter. So real engagement of workers in the in active citizenship and our democracy. But like all things, trade union education moved towards the state. We became over-dependent on state funding. The new realism and partnership of the 1990s moved it much more towards a technical education. And although there are attempts in the unions now to move back towards political education, the economic settlement we have in the workplace mean attracting workers or getting free time from them becomes increasingly more and more difficult. again, you know, I feel that adult education is on the edge. Edna was very optimistic about the mayoral structure, but in Sheffield, we're now in a debate with our mayor, who is cutting funding to adult education and to the WEA. So, you know, it's not a battle that will go away. You know, it is a very fragmented system. The WEA has now become much less of a force than it used to be. And adult education at a local authority level in Sheffield is very poor. There are lots of informal education initiatives around, but again, they're fragmented. And I think the Commission needs to think about, is there any way we can bring them together into some sort of movement, as was quite clearly happening in 1919. And I guess this is one I'd like to spend a bit of time on, the gap between our learners and the education establishment. There isn't the idea of cultural hegemony that was thought of by Gramsci. And I see that more and more in our, what is becoming more and more a rigidly class system. Lots of talk at the moment. There's still the old alienation from previous education. Lots of talk around mental health issues at the moment. And I look at my own community and I wonder whether they really are mental health issues of the individual, or whether they're not systemic issues. And we need to face up to them, that they are systemic rather than individual failures. There is a tendency to medicalise all our political difficulties in the individual. And I think we need to be careful in that and say that it's society that needs healing rather than individuals. We now have 10% of the population on antidepressants, which is a pretty depressing system. In terms of the class system and the lack of political engagement, for me, the Brexit experience was a very sad one, really, in that, you know, the Brexit issue for me, there were realistic arguments on both sides of the way people might vote. And yet when the debate was conducted in a very, people who disagreed were either posh, or conversely, in a university city like Sheffield, I saw many people denigrated for putting forward an alternative argument over the Brexit issue. The idea that people were acting against their own economic interests, were being irrational, you know, that's not the communities I know. And there is a real danger there that acts as a separation and a real split in our democracy. There needs to be respect for alternative points of view around our democracy. I suppose I may just have time. This is something that always inspires me. Just a 2-minute clip, and I think it sums up where we need to be looking to be for the Commission. I'll leave people to seek out the video themselves. It's Jimmy Reed, the ship worker, talking about alienation and the need to move education from being a rat race to being education for life. And Dave, I think it's very, yes.
Could you put the YouTube link in the chat, then people can have a look at it, maybe over lunch break?
Certainly will.
Yeah, that'd be fab.
Yeah. So that's me, really. Just at the end of it, is that the idea of the Commission is that we ask some big questions, I think. The differentiation between us, where do we stand as we did with those organisations in 1919? Are we within the state or outside the state? Can we organise as we did outside the state? And can we begin to represent our workers and communities as they need against the neoliberal agenda? Okay, thanks a lot.